Hey guys, I'm really excited about this episode. I'm joined by Matt Dzugan from Muck Rack, and we're talking about how generative AI is fueling PR's resurgence. Muck Rack recently put out a report called What is AI Reading? And we're going to go through a few themes during this conversation. The first one is generative AI and and PR visibility, practical tips for PR pros, technical insights and Muck Rack tools, the future of PR and AI, and then some closing questions at the end. I definitely think you're going to want to tune into this episode. And not only that, I think you're going to want to share it with your team and your colleagues that you know in the profession. This is going to be a powerful episode helping you better understand what's going on with generative AI systems and how the power of PR is more alive than ever. I'm excited for this topic, and I hope you are too.
Welcome to On Top of PR with Jason Mudd.
Hello and welcome to On Top of PR. I'm Jason Mudd, your host, and today we are joined by Matt Dzugan, and our topic today is how generative AI is fueling PR's resurgence, or how earned media is shaping AI output. Matt Dzugan is the Senior Director of Data at Muck Rack, where he leads data engineering and machine learning teams to enhance the platform's AI-driven PR tools for organizations like Google and Duolingo. He joined Muck Rack about 2 years ago to expand its AI capabilities, driving product innovation like recommendation systems to improve journalist discovery significantly. Muck Rack's CEO has praised his leadership for building strong cross-functional engineering teams with analytical excellence. Matt, that's quite an introduction. Welcome to On Top of PR.
Yeah, thanks. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here too. I know this is going to be an extremely popular episode with our guests, with our audience. I know they're excited to learn from you and learn from our conversation today. So we're talking about how generative AI is fueling PR's resurgence. This is a hot topic on LinkedIn right now, and I'm proud that Axie is part of that conversation. So let's start with the big picture. Why did Muck Rack undertake this study, and what were you hoping to learn about AI and media citations from it?
Yeah, fantastic question. So there's been a few people talking about AI's relationship with PR. And since these AI models are not necessarily something where we can go look up in documentation exactly how they work, how exactly does ChatGPT work, how exactly does Gemini work, we figured the best way to truly understand what it does is to just test it thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of times, and kind of jot down our observations like a scientist kind of testing an experiment where, putting different stimuli at the system and seeing what it does. And of course, as I'm sure we're going to get into, one of our findings is AI loves earned media. AI loves journalism, and that makes it quite an exciting time to be in PR. Again, this was kind of a hypothesis that we had going into the study, but we wanted to be able to back it up with measurable numbers and data.
Got it. So for our audience, we're going to, first of all, I want to clarify that the name of this report, I believe, is called What is AI Reading? Is that correct, Matt?
Yep, that's what it's called.
And we're going to provide a link to access the report through Muck Rack's website. They have a landing or registration page that you can register, and It will automatically send you that PDF. So that'll be available in the episode notes at On Top of PR or on top of PR.com/Matt-Dzugan. But Dzugan is spelled differently than you might think. Matt, how do you tell them how to spell your last name?
We've got, so it's Dzugan. There's a silent Z in there. It's an Eastern European name. So a couple silent Z. Yeah.
So on top of PR.com/Matt-Dzugan with a Z between the D and the U. So if you're listening in real time and you want to start checking that out or follow along with the episode notes, you may do that there. So Matt, we're talking about what is AI reading and the results that your organization figured out from that research. Now, you said thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of searches or queries. Ballpark, what was the exact number and how did you set up that many?
Yeah, great question. So the exact number was somewhere around 500,000 queries. But if you think about it, if you use ChatGPT or Gemini, any of the tools, what it'll do, you'll type a question at it and then it'll respond. And usually it's got 5 or 6 or 10 links on the side. So those 500,000 queries that we did resulted in well over 1 million sort of cited links. And so there's sort of two interesting data sets there for us, both the actual questions and responses, as well as, what we were particularly interested in is what are all these pieces of journalism? What are all these links on the side that are being cited, so that we could learn from those? So yeah, that number of links was well over 1 million.
Wow. Okay. So great. I'm glad you're there to do it, because I don't think the PR people there could have done it. So
yeah, there's an interesting kind of like data point. Running that many queries, ChatGPT, it's fast, but it does take a few seconds. So if you were to have run all of those queries back to back to back to back, like, imagine a monkey at a computer doing back to back all those queries, it would have taken about 9 to 12 months for them all to run. So, there were some interesting engineering challenges on our end to actually get the answers within a week or so.
Yeah. Awesome. That's incredible. Sometime we'll have to talk about the behind the scenes of that.
Yeah, sure.
So I've kind of outlined our conversation for today under some categories, and I want to share that up front with our audience. In fact, I regret not doing that sooner. So we're going to go through generative AI and PR visibility first. Second, we're going to talk about practical tips for PR pros. Third, we'll talk about technical insights and Muck Rack tools. Fourth, the future of PR and AI. And then we'll end with some closing questions. Does that sound good to you, Matt?
Sounds great. Let's do it.
Good. I'm glad you didn't change your mind from when we rehearsed this.
Yes. Yeah. That would be great.
So generative AI and PR visibility, one of the most striking field findings from your report is that more than 95% of the links cited by AI are non-paid media, and 20% of them are journalistic. Now, I wasn't surprised about the non-paid, or was not surprised about it not citing paid media, just because of the lack of credibility in advertising. But why do you think earned media has become such a dominant input for AI-generated responses? I have my thoughts, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it essentially comes down to, for these AI models, the company's business model, like those companies make money when they deliver a product that's credible. I kind of even remember, almost seems like ancient history now, but I think it was around 2022 when ChatGPT 3.5 came out and everyone was kind of using that. And that was the one that really started all this hype. It never cited anything, and people were quick to find flaws and what are now referred to as hallucinations. So I actually think these companies have learned that credibility matters, and they've had to create sort of an ecosystem to draw credibility from, and that's where the citations come. So I think it all comes down to, they make more money when they can deliver credible sources.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm with you. I was extremely frustrated. I started using ChatGPT around definitely by version 2, and I would just have this growing frustration of, okay, where did that come from? Exactly. Or can you cite your source? And I was pleased that I knew to ask to cite the source, but there would be times where I can't cite the source for this. I'm like, well, then what is this? So exactly. And then, as you mentioned, hallucinations, which still drive me crazy to this day. But all right. So the second question, your study shows that when users ask timely or opinion-based questions, generative AI tools tend to cite recent journalism. What does that suggest about the power of PR to reshape not just public perception, but AI-driven answers?
Yeah, I think this is really one of the most compelling findings from the report. Is overall, 27% of citations are journalism, but when you ask it a question about anything recent, so instead of just saying, what's the best PR software, if you say, recent innovations in PR software, all of a sudden, those results tend to skew way more journalism. Basically, about half of the citations are journalism. So that all goes to show that getting your message to land in journalism is going to get it cited by these AI systems. In particular, we find that the most common day, published date, like, if you go look at an AI response and you go look at all the things it's citing on the right hand side and you say, when were all of these things published? The most common day that we see things get published is yesterday or the day before. So that hyper recent content is useful what that might mean for PR pros is, try to generate as much frequent recent coverage as you can.
Well, definitely easier said than done, Matt. And I know that's what every PR pro is already trying to do. So thanks for adding to the pressure.
Exactly. No pressure.
Right. Well, I don't know if we got a little ahead of ourselves there, but I'm just going to ask you in case there's more to add. But my next question is, recency and authority play a huge role in whether a story gets cited. For brands trying to improve their visibility in AI generated answers, what's the key takeaway here? I think you already said it, but is there anything else to add to it?
We did touch on recency. I will talk about authority too. I mean, maybe to no one's surprise, there have been a lot of, since we launched this study, there have been a lot of conversations on LinkedIn and online that I've, been trolling in a few comments and kind of just reading some of them. A lot of folks are saying, well, duh. But I do think it's kind of reassuring to sort of see the evidence to back it up. Authority matters. With authority, the big reputable outlets, they tend to get more coverage. And I think, again, is it obvious? Sure, some would say it's obvious, but it's helpful to see it, and it's just a reminder to PR pros that this is why these AI are citing these sources, because they have believable credibility. Like the AI actually believes your big name media outlets, maybe more than, my own personal blog.
Right. 100%. I agree. So real quick, maybe a little bit off of the course here, but at first, I think some of the companies that specialize in press wires, press release distribution services, they were kind of early on, Matt, jumping in and saying how important their role is in this process. But I'm starting to see data that might show that it's more about the earned media than it is the actual company releases. Talk to me just a little bit about that. Obviously, newswire postings have a role. What's the role that your data showed that they have with generative AI systems?
Yeah, great question. I think that, so we do see press releases show up in the citations. It's not anywhere near as high as journalism, but there's also sort of an invisible hidden link there that's sort of hard to quantify, right? So let's say a company puts out a press release about their new flavor of ice cream or whatever. The fact that press release went out will oftentimes indirectly sort of, cause earned media to sort of happen. And then that earned media is going to be the content that gets right. cited by the AI. So yes, it is true. We do see the press releases get cited at a lower rate than kind of journalism, but I think there's still a through line there.
So I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Can I take away from this conversation that earned media supersedes a corporate release posted on a wire, but a corporate release on a wire when somebody's doing a query about a particular company would also end up being sourced, even though it wasn't necessarily covered by an authentic media outlet?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is press releases, whether it's from the company's own page or through a wire, they show up in citations. We do see them.
Yep.
Both cases, they show up less frequently in journalism. So that's definitely true. Another thing to keep in mind, though, is these systems are changing. They're dynamic. Our study is as of July 2025, right? Who's to say where this goes in the future? But those were our findings.
Sure. I mean, this could all be null and void in a matter of weeks, in theory. I don't think it will be based on...
I don't think it will.
Yeah. I don't think it will be, but we just don't know, right? We don't control those, control them. But, as I'm thinking about this, just to kind of send a message here real quick, Matt, so every year Axia gives away a scholarship to a deserving upper class student at a university who's studying public relations.
Yeah, great.
If we post that on a newswire, right, and it doesn't get covered, but somebody types in, tell me about Axia Public Relations Scholarship, they're probably going to pull from the press release that we posted to a newswire. But if we have a credible news outlet, whether it's PR Week or maybe that person lives, our recent recipient from just a couple weeks ago. She lives in the Atlanta metro area. And so if we got the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to run that story, that's going to preempt any news release we might have put on our website or our newswire. But for that query where someone wants to know about our scholarship, if there were no media coverage to speak of, it might reference our website or the newswire post. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, excellent example. I couldn't have said it better. I think that's exactly how to think about it.
All right. Well, let me know if Muck Rack's hiring, and I'll jump right in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Let's pivot to practical tips for PR pros, because this is what my LinkedIn inbox is blowing up with DMs from PR people saying, "Hey, it looks like you got a really good handle on this. Help us, help our PR firm or help my PR department." And, I haven't done this yet, but I'm like, well, that's what people hire us to do. We are available to help you. But I think at the end of the day, we've been early on the discussion about this and looking for ways to adopt it. And now I think people have gone from the attitude 3 years ago or so of, oh, I'm not going to participate because I think it's going to take our jobs. I think it's, bad for whatever. It's like, okay, well, you can also keep using a fax machine if you want to, but it's 2025. Let's move on. Right. So practical tips for PR pros. How can PR professionals proactively optimize their earned media for discoverability in generative AI systems like ChatGPT and Gemini?
Yeah. So this is the million, if not 10 million, if not $1 billion. $1
billion question. Yep.
No pressure.
I'm setting the bar real low for you.
Okay. So, basing the answer here in the findings from the report, obviously, like we said, one of the findings is authority in sources matters, but not everyone's going to land earned media in New York Times and Reuters, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So another kind of very interesting takeaway from the report is that, sure, does Reuters and AP News show up often across all these different queries? Yes, because, there's content there in every little niche. But what we found is that if you're in a niche, if you make shoes or you make ice cream or what have you, like there are a specific set of niche specific publications that really matter in getting those citations. So sure, while Ice Cream Weekly might not show up as the top number one outlet in our overall rankings, but boy, if you're in the ice cream space, like Ice Cream Weekly is maybe going to be your place to go. Now, of course, that's just a fictitious outlet I made up, but the takeaway there is. So
I should stop Google searching for Ice Cream Weekly.
Yeah, you can stop that. If it is real, their traffic's going to explode after this.
That's right.
But what I was going to get to is, I think, how do you optimize? Like, what's the practical tip? Mm-hmm. Find those outlets. Find who are those outlets in your niche that are getting cited over and over and over, and that's kind of where to point your strategy.
Yeah. And I got to imagine, based on what we know today and the standards that are there today, that domain authority is probably playing a role in that.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean, we even, it didn't make the final report, but, we did on kind of internally, we did a little graph where we plotted all the outlets. What is their domain authority against how often do they get cited? And it's exactly as you'd expect. Yeah. It's a clear, 1-to-1 trend. No surprise.
I only wish I would have thought of domain authority many years before somebody else did. So,
sure. Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned in the report, when we just talked about this, you mentioned in the report that niche-specific outlets are often cited in industry-specific AI queries. What should PR teams be doing differently when targeting vertical media? And I just want to give a shout out to vertical media because it's always been valuable. It's always more targeted. When you're truly reaching a certain vertical, you want to be in those trades. And now this is just showing yet another layer and rationale for optimizing and targeting those outlets.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that's one of the real kind of cool takeaways from this report is that it sort of confirms a lot of the kind of conventional sort of maybe tribal wisdom within the PR community that has been around for a while. It just puts data behind it. So absolutely.
Yeah, we do strategic insights for our newest clients. And the key takeaway for everybody that participates in that process is this was so helpful to have attributable sources to cite things that we assumed, perceived, or knew to be true, but just had no, data to put it all together or back it up or attribute to a third party besides the founder decided to start this company because they knew there was a problem. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I feel like this is doing as well, is it's giving data points to say, our instincts on this weren't wrong. In fact, they were right. And here's the numbers and the independent study to back it up. So,
yep.
All right, Matt, last question before we hit a break here, which is, given that AI rewards journalistic content more than paid or owned media, how should companies rebalance their content strategies?
Yeah. And I think, the answer here depends on every PR team's kind of goals and who are your sort of personas and who are your users. I mean, maybe you might work for a specific company that just the industry you're in, the niche you're in, maybe you don't have to worry about the problem of people checking in on your brand and AI system. So I think, take this response in the context of like really what any of my suggestions here are in the vein of how do we look good to the AIs, right? Mm-hmm. But to this point, I mean, I guess it's in the headline, like the journalism, the credible journalistic sort of earned media sources are the way to go. It's like every dollar that you spend there is worth double what you might spend, doing owned media. That's just how the findings work. And I think it's probably because, again, like I said at the very outset, these AI models are incentivized to create credible sources. And they've probably just built in some logic that says, hey, these earned media sources aren't going to be as credible to the broader audience. Now, that's not to be said that it never uses them. I mean, you can see in our study, it certainly cites owned media around 10% of the time. So it's not zero, but it's certainly not as often as journalism.
Well, I think it comes back to what we've been talking about, domain authority, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if your corporate website has a higher ranking than the New York Times or, Wall Street Journal or something else, then maybe you will be more, credible in that lens. But I would say good luck to a company that's trying to have higher domain authority, especially a B2B brand, right? Than those would be. So, yeah. All right, Matt, this has been a great conversation. I'm excited to finish it up here on the other side, but we have to take a quick break. And so with that, let's do that. And we'll come right back with more from Matt Dzugan of Muck Rack, talking about this pretty cool study they did of what AI is reading for our topic today of how generative AI is fueling PR's resurgence and how earned media is ultimately shaping AI output. So we'll be right back after this message. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Enjoy 30 days free of Audible Premium Plus by going to ontopofpr.com/audible.
You're listening to On Top of PR with your host, Jason Mudd. Jason is a trusted advisor to some of America's most admired and fastest growing brands. He is the managing partner at Axia Public Relations, a PR agency that guides news, social, and web strategies for national companies. And now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to this episode with Matt Dzugan with Muck Rack. We are talking about AI and PR and the exciting future of PR and AI working together. I don't think there's been a more exciting time in the last several decades to be part of public relations and the power of media relations and getting earned media coverage for your employer or your clients. The last couple of things we're going to talk about in this half of the episode is technical insights and Muck Rack tools, the future of PR and AI, and then some closing questions together as we wrap up. So here we go, Matt. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. This is a very timely subject. In fact, during the break, I was just talking to my podcast team about let's get this live as soon as possible, even if that means, unfortunately, preempting or bumping a couple of our other guests, because I think this topic is on fire right now, and we want to make sure we do a good job of helping our audience stay. on top of PR. So technical insights and Muck Rack tools. Of course, this isn't a commercial for Muck Rack, but you guys are really the disruptors in this space. You've done a great job at that over the years. I'm really proud of what your company has done. And here you are still doing it in the AI citation era. So you lead the data and machine learning team at Muck Rack. Can you share what went into the analysis of more than 1 million AI citations and what made this study technically challenging or unique? You've alluded to it a little bit, but let's dive in just a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, the pure time it would take to run all these citations and queries would take months. So what we had to do is we, just because of our dedication to answering this question and sort of gaining more insights about this topic, we were able to kind of like rent, one of those high performance computing clusters. Like think of those things, the classic image of the big hallway with the big racks of computers all the way down the hallway. We were able to kind of like set up a little system like that to run a bunch of these queries at the same time, so that rather than waiting 9 months for this whole thing to finish, we could just do it in a weekend. So that was certainly a fun part of this.
Yeah, that's crazy and admirable and something that, I think like, Steve Jobs would be proud of you guys for doing kind of thing, right? I mean, that's pretty cool. So sounds like you were in a big data center and with a bunch of servers and co-location environment and were able to do that. Were you still manually doing the queries, or did you have those programmed to be done automatically? And
no.
were you by the pool for the weekend while this was all happening, Matt?
That's true. Yeah. So actually, great question. We were able to kind of do it all programmatically. And even the cool thing about, don't want to get too far into the technical weeds, but in the modern day of cloud computing and all these things, we don't even have to be in the same room or state as these computers doing all the work. So yes, I literally kicked off the stuff, and then I was smoking a pork shoulder on my deck at the same time while it was happening. So
I guess I missed the phone call to come over and enjoy that.
Yeah, sorry, Jason.
We could talk about this ahead of time. So
next time.
I don't know if there's any truth to this rumor that computers overseas are less expensive to run than computers in the United States. That's just a really bad joke. That's all that is. So anyway, all right. So your Generative Pulse tool could be very helpful to the profession. How does it help PR teams monitor and improve their brand presence in generative AI search results? But before we do that, we owe a quick intro of what this Generative Pulse tool actually is, and then we can get into how does it help PR teams monitor and improve their brand presence in generative AI search results.
Yeah, sure. I'll try to tackle both at once a little bit. Yeah. So you can think of Generative Pulse as much like, this report kind of took the PR world by storm. A lot of people have been talking about it, the utility of earned media, the utility of journalism. We did that broadly, like I mentioned, across many queries. Some of these queries were in the finance industry. Some were in, healthcare. Some were, every niche we touched. Think of Generative Pulse as the version of this report, but for your brand. So basically what it allows you to do, write in a couple details about your brand, pick the brand that you're supporting. If you have any specific kind of like sub-focus areas within the brand. So, maybe I run a hotel chain. Instead of just typing in the name of my hotel chain, I can also say that I'm in particular interested in catering to families or, any sort of goals or key messages you might want to focus on. And then we take the hard work of running many prompts into these AIs. And we don't just hit ChatGPT, we hit all sorts of them, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, et cetera. We will direct these prompts at these AI systems. We will analyze the results, in particular, analyze the citations. And then we will create a dashboard for you, and the dashboard updates every day. You can see how these things change over time. And the important part here is and this is kind of, especially the Muck Rack strength here, every time these AI systems cite a link to say, hey, here's where I got my answer from. Here's why I'm saying this. Here's where my opinion is coming from. In the Muck Rack tool, Generative Pulse, we're saying, here's that journalist. You can go pitch to them. Here's their media outlet. Go send them a pitch. So we're kind of connecting it back to our core database of journalists and outlets. So really the way, kind of to go back to your initial question, how can people use the tool to improve their presence? What the tool lets you do is see who are the journalists that matter in your space, who are the outlets that matter in your space, in your niche, for your brand, and then you can go pitch them.
Got it. Yeah. So that tool is now available, or I think it just became available. So I signed up for it like early. It's like, okay, we'll tell you when it's ready. And then I got an email saying it's ready. Is that going to be part of the subscriber feature, or is that available to the public, and for how long, or what's the deal?
Yep. Great question. So it is available to Muck Rack customers, but there's also an opportunity to demo it. So if you're not a Muck Rack customer, there's a flow on our website where you can go in and you can sign up it'll get you in touch with someone at Muck Rack, and they can hook you up with a trial of it.
Okay. So that could be a standalone product, or is it required to have a full Muck Rack subscription? We do
kind of like treat it as a standalone piece of functionality as far as how the billing and accounting works and everything. Like, you will get the rest of Muck Rack if you sign up for this thing. So think of it as a separate product, but if you sign up for this product, you'll get the rest of Muck Rack too.
Okay. Well, we'll let the sales department deal with all those questions, Matt, but I wanted to just get some guidance there. So okay. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Question 9 on my list here is, what industries seem to be best positioned, or perhaps most at risk, Matt, when it comes to being cited by AI based on your findings?
Yep. Absolutely. So of course, best positioned. I mean, like the elephant in the room is that, of course, journalists and journalism have been sort of hurting over the last several years. I don't know, last 5 to 10 years, sort of a downward trend. And just, Muck Rack does reports on, employment numbers. And of course, Muck Rack's very involved in the community and trying to post job postings and help journalists stay employed, because we believe in that kind of as a principle.
Sure. Good for the industry profession.
Good for the industry, of course.
And good for the world overall, not to interrupt you. Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. An important part, not to get too philosophical, of course, but important part of society in general. But yeah, so I think, it will be interesting to see how the exact economics of this all play out, right? Of course, most these companies are for-profit organizations, and there's money exchanging hands, whether it's between the AI providers and the media organizations themselves. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that these AI systems need journalism and earned media to survive. And so again, I don't know exactly how the economics will shake out, but one thing's for certain is that ChatGPT and Gemini, their product suffers if journalists disappears off the face of the earth. And so they're not going to let that happen.
Interesting. Well, I will be watching to see how that unfolds, because that's an interesting item there. And so, perfect segue into the future of PR and AI. Matt, what trends do you see emerging as AI evolves, and how might this affect how PR professionals pitch stories or work with journalists?
Yeah, so I think we touched on this briefly up at the top, but if you kind of play out the trajectory that we've seen in the last 3 years since this kind of AI hype cycle has started, we've seen credibility become an important factor, right? Both you and I kind of shared anecdotes where initially, when we first started using these tools, your jaw drops on the floor. Wow, how does this happen? And then you give it a second look and you're like, wait, there's how many R's in strawberry? I don't know if you saw, there was an old joke like that ChatGPT couldn't count how many R's were in strawberry.
Right.
But so I think we've seen these systems, again, in their own self-serving needs to survive. We've seen them try to adopt citations and other techniques to become more credible. That's only going to further continue. Like you've said, in the recent past, you've had to ask it for citations. Like we're going to get to the world where it's never going to do anything without checking the web, checking for a reputable citation. So I think the reliance on citation and therefore earned media journalism is only going to go up, only going to increase. It's going to be something that we just take for granted. So I think, again, it's going to be a pretty compelling story arc for PR and journalism.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'm just going to insert kind of 3 quick thoughts that I have here, Matt. Generative AI is exactly what I thought PCs would be when I first got on a PC at my friend's house. You know, I literally from TV, right, from movies and HAL and things like that and war games, I just thought I would type in what I wanted to do. Like, you know, hey, build a video game where a kid does this and does that and boom, let's go. You know, and I remember I was staying at my friend John's house and his mom had a computer before most anybody else I knew. And he was like, do you know how to use a computer? I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to use a computer. I know how to program. Or, you know, I was like, you know, do you have any games on it? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I bet we could program one. You know, that was my attitude. Like, let's just tell it the game we want to play and it should start playing it for us. So I'm really excited to, you know, in my lifetime to have seen computers go from being early in people's homes to what I always thought it would be. And then when I was a college student, we had email and it was all done through like Telnet or something where it was just text based. And you know, I think it's at least, Gary Vaynerchuk is at least known for saying, I don't know if he was the origin of saying, but marketers ruin everything. And so I think back to how simple email was back then. You know, you just type some text and you send it. You couldn't really format anything. You couldn't link things. It's just basic text, but it was perfect. It was so simple and easy, kind of like what text messages were like when they first came out. But then next thing you know, we start having graphics and formatting and ads and all that stuff. And that's what's going to happen ultimately to these generative AI platforms. You're going to see sponsored content. You're going to see colors. It's going to just be quite a bit different than it is today. And we're all going to look back and say, oh, it was so much simpler and easier back then, you know, without all this stuff. But they've got to learn how to make money beyond just subscriptions, kind of paid subscriptions. And those are the 3 things I really want to just kind of throw out there because not everybody, but I think you and perhaps our audience would appreciate what I'm talking about, you know, and kind of, you know, eager to see what us marketers do to kind of ruin the simplicity of how it works today. Yeah. Any thoughts on that, Matt?
I mean, I do think that is a Gary Vee quote, or I don't know if he originated it or what have you, but I think you're onto something there. And, you know, I think the thing, at least as far as I can see, you're right. These things are going to go in a direction that none of us can predict. They're going to get a lot more advanced. But I really do think, especially just the way that the first couple months have played out, and even seeing just people online, you know, people will post images of these fake movie title. Like there's all sorts of weird stuff out there on the internet, you know, these fake movie trailers and fake books and fake commercials. Fake, like all that stuff is out there. And what I actually think, you know, you could take a pessimistic approach and say, oh, the world's going wild. What is happening here? But I actually think it's kind of training society in a way to be skeptical and be, hungry for credibility. Like I really think that's happening before us in our very eyes is we're training the general population to want credibility. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, I like that too. And, you know, the other thing is you were talking about is, you know, it's a great opportunity also to kind of, you know, you could create a product, not, you know, a prototype of a product using AI visually, and then start building commercials and all the things you're describing here for it, just to see if it goes viral and if people are genuinely interested in it. And that would save you so much time from a, you know, R&D and you know, market research and putting together the product type if you have this big idea for something unique. So that's something pretty exciting about this as well.
Yeah, I actually just saw a post on, forgive me, but I just saw a post, a Google engineering and product leader just on, I think it was LinkedIn earlier today, saying something very much along those lines. Like it used to be at Google, we required what they called like a writing first culture. You had to get all your thoughts on paper, and then people could go into your document and like throw stones at your ideas and your research. And the point was actually now the cost of trying stuff is so low
Right.
that sure, you might want to have some good ideas, but like, let's just try stuff and get reactions as opposed to being super methodical. So that's another thing. It'll be interesting to see that dynamic play out.
And look, I'm not saying we're dogging on paid media. We're making it clear the role paid media is playing in this. But to that point, what you just described and I described, if you want to roll out a test product, use paid media to do it, to amplify this content that you're developing. And then you can kind of get more input from it, much quicker. So that's another option as well. Okay, Matt. So do you think newsrooms' decisions and journalists' coverage will shift now that their work is influencing AI outputs directly?
Yeah, so this one is tricky for me. My background, engineering, data. I've never been a part of a newsroom. Of course, being at Muck Rack here, I've had the opportunity to work fairly closely with a lot of folks in journalism and PR. But at the bottom line, the old saying is kind of follow the money, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think that what we're seeing here is, many of these newsrooms and media outlets are striking major deals with these AI organizations. Like, we're talking big paychecks. So I do think there will be changes. Again, it's another one of those where it's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. But if these newsrooms, if these media companies know that part of their audience is essentially an AI system, absolutely they're going to be catering to do that. In fact, I have a colleague that I just met with this morning who works as part of a newsroom. I won't disclose which one, but he was just telling me that they've been doing a bunch of analysis on what types of content, much like our study, what types of content gets cited and linked to more. And he's taking it from the angle of, not just like what types of media outlets like Muck Rack was looking at, but he was going even a step further. Like, if you put bullet points at the top, or if you do long run-on sentences, or if you do a lot of quotations, like those sorts of stylistic choices, he's starting to analyze for his own newsroom to see, how they can optimize their own coverage. So that's something that excites me too. I'm sure that at Muck Rack, we'll take a look at that and produce something public facing as well. So you can be on the lookout for that. But that is all to say, yes, newsrooms will change. And I think, like the stylistic bullets versus sentences versus quotes, I think that's all going to be part of it.
Matt, first of all, I want to applaud you because you're always kind of one step ahead of my questions, and whether you're anticipating those or reading my mind or what, but that's really good. Because
it's the lengthy rehearsal we did.
Right, or lack thereof, right? So tell me though, this is perfect setup for our next question, but first, I just want to kind of add a little commentary in this, is that to me, this is a really good reminder. So I started doing search optimization candidly by accident in 1998. And a colleague was like, hey, look, I've figured out a little way to, help this client get ranked higher back then on Yahoo. And we didn't know to call it search and optimization. We just said, hey, this is cool. Let's do more of it. So we started doing more of it. We started selling it to companies, and we just said, hey, we can get you ranked higher on Yahoo. And everybody's like, that sounds great, because Yahoo was what Google was a year or two ago, right? And so people thought that was really important. The reason I'm bringing this up is because early in search and optimization, the best practice was always and has always been do what's best for the human first, and long term, that's the best search optimization strategy, right? And so you could do a few tactics and techniques that will, kind of fool the engine temporarily to get you ranked a little higher, but it was always what was best for the human first. And so I would lean back into that conversation with the colleague you just mentioned at the news outlet and say, absolutely figure that stuff out, but know that Google has never done anything that goes counterintuitive to what the human wants, right? Or that what's in the best interest of the human. Now, employment practices and, don't do evil or whatever they say aside. I mean, at the end of the day, that's do no evil. The idea is that's the direction they've always taken. And that's why Google's been so successful with their search, is because they've always done what's best for the human first, not the company, not the SEO people and stuff like that. So I think we need to keep looking at generative AI under the same lens, that if we were to do a crystal ball, it would be, of course, humans and human behavior changes or evolves over time, so will search engines, so will generative search responses. So to that end, the question 12 I had here, is let's talk about PR strategy in what's becoming an AI focused world. I reworded that from being AI first, because I think you still, as I just said, you got to be human first, human focused first, but we're now really starting to focus, especially as a profession, on AI. So what role do you believe data and machine learning will play in the future of earned media success? And once again, you've already kind of hit on this a little bit, but I think you teed up the question real nice if you want to hammer home any other points.
Yeah, I think, there's a few things we've already touched on. I will bring up, I think, one, when we talk about data, like one thing that's interesting to me and gets me excited is, I think, a lot of folks that I've talked to, a lot of our partners with Muck Rack, a lot of our customers, just people that I meet at conferences. PR is tricky to measure oftentimes. Like, sure, we've got things where we can talk about number of mentions, number of placements. We could talk about the domain authority or, monthly visitors of those outlets where we're getting placements. But still, sometimes I think a lot of PR pros struggle, if they're talking to their CEO might say, so what? I think what these generative results, these citations, I think what it represents is kind of a really cool barometer that is kind of like everyone understands how to talk about, like, hey, we got all this earned media coverage and look at what it did to our AI results about our brand. Like, to me, that's kind of a really cool sort of side effect of this for the PR community, is it maybe makes part of the PR pro's job like just a little bit easier to quantify.
Yeah, I like that, Matt. And you're making me think, and you mentioned this earlier. Of course you did. But you mentioned earlier about, Google, for example, and let's not forget, other search engines that are out there too, that are also influential, like Bing. They don't go around and saying, hey, here's how we changed our algorithm exactly and why we did it and all this stuff. They keep some of that stuff as, like they should, as, proprietary information. We can expect the same thing from these generative AI tools. So we're not always going to know, but, there may be some fine print that says you shouldn't do what you guys did for your study or something like that. But at the end of the day, good luck stopping you. You know what I mean? And so, at the end of the day, like we turn to experts who can kind of give their opinion, and things like that. At the end of the day, I prefer the data like you guys did. But as I tell my team, if we have data, let's follow the data. If we don't have data, let's follow our instincts and recommendations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think it's an exciting time. And I think that eventually, I love collaboration. Elon Musk is a guy who collaborates, gives away a lot of his intellectual property and things like that. And, that's probably one of his top qualities, I would say. And so to that end, I'm a big believer in collaboration as well. And I know some people aren't, and they just, they're in it for making money and things like that. But I think at some point, these AI platforms, the ownership, the leadership has a decision to make of, how much do they want to open their code and things like that, and collaborate versus getting, closer and tighter to the vest. And I think as it becomes more competitive and we start to see fewer and fewer players, as there's always ends up being 3 or 4 major players in any space. Yep. Okay. My closing questions are going to be, what's the one thing you wish every communicator understood about generative AI and its influence on media strategy?
Yeah. So I guess the bottom line one-liner would be there are patterns that your niche, your brand can detect and tap into for your industry. So there are absolutely specific journalists, specific outlets, specific types of content out there on the web for your brand that are influencing what AI says about you. So I think, it's your job, the communicator, the PR pro, it's your job to figure out where is that little corner of the universe, right? And, set your sights there.
Okay. Matt, we talked about that. We're going to put a link in the episode notes from On Top of PR /Matt-Dzugan Dzugan has a Z in it, folks. And we'll put a link to the full report. We'll also put a link to the Generative Pulse landing page where they can go learn more about that as well. So that'll save you from having to give us an exact URL on your website to do it. We'll just figure it out and add it to the episode notes. Sure. So everybody go to ontopofpr.com/Matt-Dzugan to check that out. And Matt, as we're wrapping up here, what excites you the most about where all this is headed, whether that's PR or somewhere else in this age of AI?
Yeah, I think, really the thing that's most exciting is, almost the entire summary of this conversation, the entire premise of why you have me, a data guy, on your podcast. Like, that's what's cool about this to me, is PR is really seeing a resurgence, kind of like a second wind or a third wind. Like there's a huge momentum that people are understanding and wrapping their heads around, and we're living through it right now on a day by day, week by week basis. Of, oh, holy cow! That earned media that I get, these through lines, these key messages that I'm landing in these key publications and key journals, that's getting more eyeballs than just the readers of that publication. That's getting the eyeballs of anybody who searches anything about this topic. So right. I think it's just such a huge multiplier on the audience and sort of downstream impact of what PR does. So that's frankly why I'm excited about it.
Yeah, the same. I feel reinvigorated as a, PR agency owner and leader, and I see it in my team. And, I've encouraged them, hey, start talking to your friends and family about this and help them understand how all this works and why what you do matters, and how, you may not be working for, an AI company, but you're working at an agency that's helping other companies compete and thrive in the AI era, which is, to me, is pretty darn exciting. And I think, I'm a dad of 2 young adults. I think, maybe my cloud is going up a little bit in their eyes, as opposed to just being a PR guy that's positioning companies well in this public spotlight. So I'm digging it. It's helped me go back to my roots of early technology and just kind of seeing how it's all working. And, if anybody ever claimed that PR was dead or stale or whatever, we've talked a lot about the challenges of PR, but here's something very exciting to kind of, help us, because PR has been named many times, as maybe you've heard, as one of the most stressful positions in America, usually number 1 to number 5 ranked year over year. And so, nothing helps people. I tell us all the time, hard work and feeling value out of your work is a great way to alleviate stress, right? If you're working hard and you feel like there's no point to it, or you're not making progress, and you're not seeing change, then of course you're going to get frustrated. But coming home from work every day and feeling like you contributed and helped, and that you're on the cutting edge of something that's very powerful, is a great paradigm shift and something to be very excited about.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. All right, Matt, if people want to connect with you on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, where do they best find you, and how would you like them to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think LinkedIn is great for this. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and especially with all this stuff with the report. So feel free to find me on there. Again, I don't know the exact URL, but it's LinkedIn / and then, my full name, MattDzugan. You can find me. You can send me a DM. I'd be happy to chat. Yeah.
Perfect. Matt, this has been a great episode. Thank you for sharing your smarts with us. Thanks for doing this report, because it's very valuable, not only to obviously, your organization, but to the industry and the profession itself. And really cool that we're able to talk about it so early after you guys released it.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of to your, you were mentioning earlier about, open and sharing intellectual property. That was a key thing with us too. We could have said, hey, let's run this study. Let's keep the results to ourselves and just build the best darn product we can out of these results. But we wanted to, we found some good findings and we wanted to share it. So I'm happy to chat with you about it. I'm happy to chat with anyone about it who, finds me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, lots of credit to your CEO as being innovative, disrupting, and forward-thinking. So, he, according to your bio, right, he had some great praise for you, and I have some great praise for him. So it's all full circle here. Maybe somebody at Muck Rack will say something nice about me one day. So anyway,
well,
Matt,
I will.
Hey, just for the record, we're recording this on Friday, August 1st, 2025. Should you be catching up on this episode later, because anything we said here today could could be changed in 15 minutes. But that's where we are at this point in our journey. Matt, since it is Friday, I want to say thanks for being here. Have a great weekend. I hope something great happens to you this weekend. And right back to our audience, I want to close by saying, hey, I hope something great happens to you today as well. And I hope something great happens to you in your profession and in your work, because you took the time to invest in yourself in this episode and this topic today. To that end, if you thought it was helpful, please take a moment to share it with a friend or colleague. Let us know how you felt about this episode, what other topics you'd like to see us explore. We are very listener and audience friendly and eager to connect with you on LinkedIn or otherwise. So with that, this is Jason Mudd, thanking you for giving me the opportunity to be on top, help you stay on top of PR. Be well.
This has been On Top of PR with Jason Mudd, presented by ReviewMaxer. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and check out past shows at ontopofpr.com.